computer. Okay.
Fabulous. Yes, so I'm in your time zone at least, which is nice.
What's the background? It looks like you're in a country setting.
Yeah, it almost looks like a sauna, doesn't it? It's my in-laws' sunroom. So they're in Connecticut, and yeah, it's a beautiful day here in Connecticut. We're in the sunroom, and they've set up an office for me. It's perfect. I don't think I'll leave.
You must be so happy.
Oh, finally, honestly, Bill, I'd never thought it would take me this long to get back, but now I'm back. So I'll be here for the next few weeks, which is fantastic. So
Terrific.
yeah, very excited to be back.
What kind of food would you like for dinner?
Oh, I mean, you know the city better than me. I'm just like, oh, look at me, like in the city. Just this is what I do now, in NYC. That's who I am. Yeah, open to your recommendations. You're in the city quite regularly, aren't you?
Used to be before COVID, it's like twice a week. Nowadays, it's starting to come back.
Yeah. How far are you from the city? How long does it take you to get in?
Uh, Average 2.5 hours each way.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Oh
but
well.
I
Hopefully
enjoy
the dinner will be worthwhile. Hopefully the dinner with me will be worthwhile.
it. Will be. It will be. I'll be there anyway on that
Okay.
night. Plus, I'm speaking on the 13th and 14th at this event, so I have to be there.
Amazing. What event are you speaking at?
It's called Synopsis with a
Okay.
CYNOPSIS.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow. How many people are you speaking to?
a couple of hundred, I think.
Amazing. I'll need to check this out. Synopsis. Amazing. Oh, well, that's good that you're in there already. And like thankfully Connecticut, like where we are, it's maybe like an hour and 20, maybe. So
Yeah,
it's not far. So it's almost like the universe just wanted me to spend time here so that I could go into either city. It's not a coincidence, not a coincidence.
exactly.
Yeah. Well, I will great that our listeners are loving our chat.
Yes, it's wonderful. Every week we get more followers.
I know. I'm like, oh, look at us just going viral here and there.
Yeah, I mean, the
Uh,
curve is like steadily just up, up, up.
well, this is it. That way we've kind of set ourselves a bar now. So I hope that this one lives up to it. So fingers crossed.
If anything, we're going to get better, I'm sure.
Yeah, I know. I know. Like before long, I'll be like a polished, presenter, like a Q&A quiz show host. That would be me. So until then, I have done my prep and I've got my prompts from your chapter headings. Is it crazy how a few words can really prompt so much like reflective thinking? Is this you like working through redoing the chapters of your book? Is that what this is you're doing here?
Uh, Somebody who used to be an editor at the major book publishing firms was my literary agent, but he passed away.
Oh,
And he loved mind magic, but he said whenever he brings mind magic to a publisher, he said it's just too much not like a book. It's too unique and different. And he said, I appreciate that, Bill, and I think your readers appreciate it too, but the book publishing industry doesn't. So
mhm.
if you could like make it more like a normal book. So he gave us the name Powerful Mind. He
Okay.
said it should have 12 keys in it,
Mm,
and basically rewrite mind magic with that in mind.
okay.
So while he was still alive, out of respect for him, I did like 5 chapters of it, and then he passed away, and I kind of put it on hold.
Mhm.
And just recently, something made me open it up and look at it, and I said, well, this isn't a boring thing. This is adding some more insight that
Mhm.
would help people make the bridge and operationalize my suggestions. it's something I should finish. So I'm completing it.
That's amazing, because I think it's, it's one, you've got to want to like read and do the work, but even for me, who's like I'm into this, this is my world, it really forces you to think, right? And I think even with these new words or new wording, it's still forcing you to think, but perhaps it'll make it more accessible to the people that we want to reach, right? We want to create this big impact. So you've already had thousands and thousands of people reading your book, but if we can extend the scale in which people are, taking note, because sometimes I think of it as almost like radio stations, and it's like you and I are tuned into FM and they're on AM, and although they can hear the noise, they can't actually hear the words. So if this makes them able to tune in to like, FM for a little bit, then I think that it's a great use of your time, and a great addition to help unlock this to more people. So great that you're doing it.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, no. So you just got to write another book, just no big deal.
No
Rewrite
big
the book.
deal. A couple 100 pages.
Yeah. You'll channel it, it'll come out in like a couple weeks. You'll do it great. You'll do it great. So okay, well, I've got my questions here. So are you happy for me to fire away?
Fire away.
Okay, amazing. So I was reading through, the 12, I think you called it the 12 keys, the 12 keys to greater personal effectiveness. And one of the first ones that kind of stood out to me was around the timing. So watch the timing. And I think the way you had phrased it was watch the timing, consciously determining how much to take your time. And I want to say this is something that a lot of people struggle with we're all told to have this abundance mindset, like everything is possible, there's always enough resources in the world. But I think, specifically we're told that around money. But I think what people struggle with quite a lot is time. People feel that time is finite and limited. So I guess with that in mind, with this key, or keys or tips to greater effectiveness, is what you're saying really just to be conscious of where, what, and who you put your time and energy with? Can you explain a little more?
Definitely. It was actually a quote from Lao Tzu: "In action, watch the timing." And it inspired me to think a lot when I was a kid about such questions. And to me, it is most relevant when you think about flow state and if you've got an idea, if you had a hunch about something, or if you got a flash and you want to act on it, sometimes it's better not to act on it instantly.
Right.
The likelihood is that there'll be a right moment for it when you do use this new idea that you've got. It'll be the perfect moment to use it. And you'll know, the clues will tell you this is what you were given this 3 days ago for. Good thing you held on to it. Here's the moment where it's going to be listened to and heard and have impact. So it's a matter of waiting for the right moment for things, particularly if they're great ideas that came to you and you feel they're inspiration from above. It doesn't necessarily mean that you should just shoot them right out there instantly as soon as you get them. It might not be the time for it yet. So the metaphor that I used to give myself advice about this was, you saw it, now let it happen in the dance.
Okay.
And to me, that meant, okay, I had a prophecy of, I was going to say this at some particular point in time, and it was going to have the desired impact. And now I'm just waiting for the cue. I've got the line memorized now. I'm just waiting for the cue to present it.
Let's say I I always think a lot between your intuition and like acting on that. It's, not spending too much time in your thoughts, or because I think sometimes we block ourselves, we get the intuition and then we spend so much time in our minds that we actually almost block ourselves and stop ourselves and tell ourselves why it isn't a great idea, why we shouldn't do it. I guess, how do you define, okay, I had this thought, now's the cue? What would you tell people to look out for to understand what their cue is to execute against that thought?
Well, if somebody asks a question where it is the actual answer to that question, that's, the most obvious kind of a cue from the universe that this is why you have that packet of data that we gave you. But it's interesting also to look at what you said about the Hamlet effect, about the overthinking and hesitation and overanalysis, because one of the other keys is to be aware of what level you're at any given point in time. Are you this robotic, ego-driven, defensive driver who's living a life that's mostly imitative and trying to not stand out from the herd and be safe and not take risks and fit in and belong? And, if you're that person at the moment, if you're identifying with that part of yourself, you're not going to get into the flow state, because it's all about self-doubt and low self-esteem and not giving yourself enough credit and recognition for being a unique creation of nature. And you're here to bring out that uniqueness that's constantly evolving and dynamic. It isn't old rhetoric that, you copied from some teenage friend because it seemed hip at the time. It's being born every second. It's new. You're giving open-minded consideration to things. Which of those two selves are you being at the moment? So when you find yourself denigrating your own potential inspirations, that's the ego part of you, the automated robot part of you, the conditioned, imitative monkey see, monkey do part of you. That isn't the part you want to be.
Yeah.
That's kind of like the autonomic AI in the brain that's trying to be helpful, but it's being counterproductive. You want to be yourself. You want to be above the brain. You want to be consciousness itself.
Yeah. So almost, it's the cue because you're getting that directive, the time is now, but not to get so caught in this, as you called it, Hamlet effect, because actually being aware that there is two kind of states, like the ego state, which is trying to probably keep you stuck, follow the path, follow the herd, and just kind of being more aware of that will be helpful for people.
I know it works for me. Being aware of when have been brought down, and knowing that the best thing for me to do now is to just clear out and wait for the natural movement to reassume. Also, if you're looking for the clues in the environment, it's a whole separate key about acknowledging the possibility that the universe is conscious, intelligent, and benevolent. And you are it. You're, one part of it, one tentacle on the octopus. You're part of it. And so it's not unnatural or unscientific to presume that information can move from one part of consciousness to another part of consciousness. So you can be given clues. It's kind of the opposite of paranoia. Paranoia is the suspicion that something is out to get you. But this is more like noia. The universe is out to gift you.
Yeah. So true. So true. It kind of leads on to like this perceiving of oneness, which I know was another thing that you'd written in your 12 keys, to look out for. So many of us, you said relax condition blocks to see how oneness really operates. And you were saying there about how actually the universe isn't out to get you, it's out to give you. I think when I first came across, we are all one, and this concept of, the people that I need to meet will be sent to me. And, while I'm in alignment, I actually don't need to try that hard. I just need to be in alignment, and these people will come to me. The universe is, we're one, and they're looking for me just as much as I'm looking for them. Now that I'm in that mindset, it's so freeing, because you don't worry about anything, because you're going to be given the tools, the resources, and this whole concept of, you don't need to know all the steps, you just need to know the next one. And I think when you get into that state, it's a really amazing place to be, right? Because you're not worried about anything, because everything's going to come your way. For people that do have these condition blocks, I think this is a huge thing, a really common thing, because people get so caught up in a lot of he said, she said, he made me feel like this, or she did that to me. I mean, what are the biggest condition blocks that people need to move through in order to see the universe the way we do, in that it is out to help you and not to get you, and we are all here to serve a purpose as one? What are the blocks that people need to watch out for?
Well, the first one that comes to mind as being something people aren't aware enough of is the degree to which we're all conditioned to seek approval. And we become dependent on getting approval from other people. And we become addicted to it. And it rules our lives, and we're not aware of it. So we're actually kind of walking around in a stupor. And it's very undermining. It's, it makes you somebody who is not a good person, somebody who's ethically unsound in their thinking, hasn't evolved to a point of natural simpatico and kindness to everything, will use it against you, and will tell in a moment. They'll understand, oh, here's somebody who I just have to play like a violin. They're dependent on hearing me say positive things about them, so I'm going to be stingy about that. And I'll control them. And there are people like that. Fortunately, not many, but there's some people who do that instinctively. The German word Schadenfreude, meaning taking pleasure in other people's suffering. It's and it's not just a German thing. I mean, the French talk about themselves and say, it isn't so much money I make, it's how little money you make that I'm really caring about. But these are jokes, really. The individuals are what exists, not collective cultures that are all the same, homogenous. It isn't. We're all victims of this tendency to pull other people down, to make ourselves feel relatively better about ourselves. But that's all coming from all this misunderstanding and all of this. It's really acceleritis. The fact that as we're growing up, and it's worse than it ever was before. Now, the degree to which you're distracted from one second to the next. Think about how many hours a day the average. There are 8 billion people on the planet. Virtually 7 billion of them have smartphones. 7 out of 8 human beings. I mean, that includes Aborigines and native indigenous cultures and so on and so forth. And what's happening on these mobile phones, these smartphones, is constant distraction. Whatever we showed you a moment ago, and now here's something else, and there's something else, and here's something else. It's just the levels of distraction were already intolerable in the 1950s. And now they're much worse, much worse. And so, of course, we never have any time to ourselves to meditate or contemplate and clear out debris that accumulates in the mind. In fact, we're so frustrated at all of the questions that we have that we can't answer that we just repress them. We don't even want to know, why do we exist, and what is the universe, and what is my consciousness, and how do I relate to other people? Those too many questions, not enough answers. Let's just leave it alone. Let's just get from moment to moment and survive the day, and not bring up these things, because they're just going to make me more frustrated. That's where most people are at, and that's what locks in this conditioned, emergency oversimplification procedure, which is this robot, whereas as opposed to bringing out who we really are, which could make us all much happier and effective.
Well, that's it. I mean, I find that, even doing coaching sessions with people, they're like, oh, this is the only hour in my week that I actually stop and think and reflect. And, it is, yeah, I mean, it's criminal, actually, that is the only hour in the week that they maybe get that time. But I'm obviously grateful that they get that hour. But it is, people are on the go from the second they wake up. I mean, you're looking at your phone, the emails are starting, you need to be here, you need to be there. And then even at nighttime, right, it is the same. Like, the phone's in people's hands when they've got a moment to relax. That might be how they relax now. And I think, a lot of our subconscious messages, because we're not giving ourselves time and space in the day, have to come through when we're sleeping. And like, I think that's why sometimes our dreams are so like vivid. The universe is trying to give us messages and trying to help us to listen, but then people wake up and just brush it off. Oh, that was a crazy dream, and don't even take the time necessarily to think about what messages they were getting in their dreams, perhaps, which I think could lead a lot of clues to people that aren't necessarily given the time to space to reflect and think.
It's a very important message about that first part of getting out of bed, before you get out of bed, those last moments when you're in that hypnagogic state. It's closer to flow state than we get during the day if we're living a normal life in the conditioned state that most people are in. So it's a perfect time to take advantage of. Keep your eyes closed. Don't even look around. Be aware now that you're moving towards being awake. You're still half asleep. You can remember that dream, at least the last one you had that night, or whichever one stands out, and see how it makes you feel. And think of it as a random connection. What thing that's happening in your life yesterday, today, does it remind you of? And it's not in a logical way, but just what's the first thing in your life that seems to connect to, and you don't know why it connects. You don't even see the connection at first. But if it feels the same, if the dream has somehow the same feeling as that event stream in your life, it might be a particular relationship or a job challenge or whatever it might be, that's why you got that dream. So now you know what the dream domain is. It's relevant to that. And then you can let the subconscious work on what was the message? What's it trying to tell me? And that'll kind of happen naturally. So seize that moment before you get out of bed and recover the dream and see what it connects to on a feeling level.
Would you say, like, we talk a lot about planting seeds, right? Through the work that you do, through the work that I do, it's planting seeds and then hoping that they will grow into something. Do you believe like dreams are almost the universe's way of like planting seeds in people's minds?
I do. I think the same is true of subconscious or preconscious ideas, images, feelings that float up. And in some cases, we totally ignore them. In other cases, for one reason or another, we try to translate them into words in our mind so we can understand it. better. And that part is conscious.
Mhm.
And before we translate it into words, very often it's lost entirely. What I find, though, is that I don't have to translate it into words in my mind in order to get it if I focus on it enough. It's
Mhm.
it's always some kind of a raw feeling or an image or a combination of those things. And then we articulate it into words in our mind, and that makes it conscious. But the conscious mind can become more conscious of the subconscious contents
Mhm.
by focusing on the place where the impulses arise from.
Mhm.
It's just looking more carefully at that and suppressing words in the mind.
Mhm.
If you avoid the words, you can get closer to the subconscious.
Mhm. Yeah, because I know you've said before that like words don't always express, you don't necessarily have the vocabulary to express exactly what these nudges or intuition is. Like we try to translate it into words, but we don't always have the words in the dictionary essentially to make sense of it, if you like. You just know without there being English to attribute to it.
Interestingly enough, my trigger words
Mhm.
are inspirations that come to me. And years and years and years ago, I always used to think of those words as obvious
Mhm.
and never wrote them down. And then when there was a conversation going on where that same idea was applicable,
Mhm.
I wouldn't remember those original words, and I would have to paraphrase my own original thought. And I saw that it wasn't as effective as that original thought. So then I started to write down the words, even though they seem obvious, they may be the perfect words for translating what that inspiration was.
Mhm.
And people should capture their own trigger words.
Mhm. Well, I think obviously that's what you've done here in the new chapters of your book that you're writing is capturing these trigger words. How would, I mean, this wasn't a question I had, but just it's come intuitively. What how would people kind of, I guess, do that work for themselves to understand what their trigger words are? You've obviously got a kind of clear understanding of what yours are. But how would people discover what their trigger words were?
Well, it comes along with a feeling of aha, eureka.
Mhm.
Technically, in the brain, there's a P300 wave, which represents surprise or discovery, and a wave of gamma, which is like even faster than beta waves.
Mhm.
But at the highest level of pure consciousness, it's coming to some realization. And every day, each of us comes to some new way of looking at things that is what had been there all along, but it kind of, the Rubik's Cube clicks into place, and you have, that person's never liked me, or I always back down in this situation. Why? Or whatever
Mhm.
it might be. We all, have these realizations, but we often just continue life as if that was, that was nice, but who cares? And I've got work to do or whatever it might be.
Mhm.
But it's worth writing them down.
Mhm.
Journaling, journaling has always been part of the process of the inner life. Aristotle and the earliest philosophers always made a point of it that the average person is missing the best thing in life by not being introspective enough. That
Mhm.
we have this ability to be introspective, but we pour all of our attention outwardly because,
Mhm.
gosh, it's so distracting out here. There's so much to look at and smell and listen and learn and so on and so forth. And that, acceleritis has just increased the amount of outward. Our attention now sucked out of us by, various screens.
Mhm.
I'm sitting here in my office. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 screens,
Mhm.
and some of them have screensavers that are constantly changing.
Yeah.
And when somebody comes into my office, they all get distracted, but I stay focused,
Yeah.
and I highly recommend focus,
Mhm.
and focus on allocating enough attention inside and outside,
Mhm.
so you're not missing anything going on outside, and you're not missing anything going on inside. And where do you get all that time and attention to do that stuff? You get it by not being in a hurry. If you're not attached to outcomes and you're not attached to being approved of, you're basically Superman, Superwoman. You're invulnerable. Nothing can touch you. You could be being tortured, but your mind could surpass even that. If you stay focused enough, yogically focused, you can then take your time at everything until there's like a speeding car closing in on you quickly. It's an actual reality situation that you have to deal with. Other than those rare occurrences, take your time more, absorb everything that's going on in the moment, and hesitate. It doesn't have to all be rapid fire. Now, that's something that is very hard to do in the social world we live in, because people are constantly interrupting. They can't wait for you to finish your sentence. They want to complete it for you and then move on to something they want to say. So this strategy of these allergies, this strategy of taking your time, you have to be willing to also be patient to get your wisdom heard. You might sit in a meeting and seem to be a deadhead who's not got anything to say. But if you wait until everyone catches a breath and then come out with something that's brief but poignant, you'll get their attention and they'll excuse you saying another short sentence. And try to get it done in 2 short sentences, because after that it's hopeless.
Yeah, it's funny since I've been through my coach training, and obviously active listening is a huge part of coaching. It just makes me so much more aware, like in daily life, like how much people do not wait until somebody's finished a sentence. They aren't actively listening. They are, and we call that listening at level 1, which is, you're just listening with the need to respond. And you see, when you see something, you can't unsee it. And it just, now I'm just like, just sit back, like, let them finish, let them finish. And, I find myself saying that to my partner all the time. And I'm like, you can tell you're not a coach, just sit back, like but it's just so innate in people to, yeah, they don't sit to listen. I mean, they don't sit to listen. And I think when you do have something, I think like our missions, we've talked about this before, our missions are to kind of make people more aware of this kind of stuff. But in a world that there's so much noise, it's how do you break through that when you really do have something that the world needs to hear? Well, I believe they do, through the work you're doing, through the work that I'm doing. It's like, how do you break through that when everybody's just shouting for, attention?
And part of it is being an attractive force, by people seeing that you're not vulnerable and weak and dependent on their approval or anything, and that you're comfortable in your own skin and your own life, and you're emanating affection for everything, and you're trying to make everybody succeed. And you don't have to say a lot of words for that attitude to be recognized. And it's so rare. People just say, who are you? What are you doing?
Yeah. Yeah. It's I always call it like your frequency. And I think that's something you can't fake, right? It's you just admit it. It's an energy without even really saying many words. Like people can tell, oh, they're a high frequency kind of being, and even if they don't necessarily relate to those words, high frequency, they're my words. If they don't relate to that, it is, I think, because it is rare for people to move through the world and not necessarily put their own worth or value outside of themselves. When somebody's worked on themselves so much that they validate themselves and they don't need this external, validation, and everything you were talking about there, you become invincible, because it's I heard this saying somewhere, and it was like, work on the things that nobody can take away from you. And I think this is exactly what you were saying there around, your mindset, your demeanor, how you show up, how you feel and think about things that are internal. Nobody can take those away. So when you work on them, it's really rare, and I believe you become then magnetic. It's almost a magnetism that you have just by being and not necessarily saying a lot.
I agree with that. It's nice. The metaphor you used about high frequency, the vibes. In certain states of consciousness, you can actually see that. You can see auras and so on and so forth. Those are higher levels of the flow state. As your ability to gestalt the oneness, the brain has to get used to. It's like when you put on a new pair of eyeglasses, the brain has to get used to how those visual signals are coming in and be able to put it all together and realize meaning from it. It's it gives you a sense that on an experiential level there is oneness, and it's not something that's obvious to us in the state in which we hurriedly try to deal with our somewhat strangely channeled society. The lives that we live, quiet desperation, J. Alfred Prufrock, T.S. Eliot, living one's life out in teaspoonfuls. Don't remember the exact quote, but that basic idea of this isn't the way life is supposed to be. I mean, this is what we're doing. This is the way life is supposed to be. Trying to share whatever wit and wisdom we've picked up from the hard knock school of Earth, and how to optimize the opportunities, how to make the best of it, and how to share that as widely as possible. Hopefully, we can accelerate the sharing of this kind of psychotechnology so that more people use it, because otherwise, using the old ways of hasty closure and dichotomies and win-lose philosophies and competitiveness and negative idealisms, all of the stuff that's causing war and havoc and terrorism and poverty and hunger and disease and all of the wrongs of the world. We could either continue to put Band-Aids on them, or we can go to the source, which is inside of each of us. And if we can channel our higher selves and gradually shrink away those dependent robots who are dwarfing ourselves, get out of the dwarves and into the real self, we can solve all those problems. Those problems will solve themselves.
Yeah, I'm a huge believer in that. And I don't know whether it's because now I've done a lot of work on myself, and I feel maybe my view of the world is, I've got a completely different view of the world than I did 5 years ago, say. And now I'm aware of all this stuff. You talk about, like, wars and, people hurting each other. And like, I'm aware of all the kind of negative or, bad things that are happening. But I just I feel more it's almost an out of body kind of experience. Um I don't feel that that's the world that I live in, and I don't know whether that, like, call it call it being I don't know what's the word, ignorant. I don't think it's ignorance. It's almost like I've got this zoomed out view of it, and it just doesn't impact me in the same way as, it might with a lot of people. And I know that I was there because I used to be one of those people, and I used to feel everything oh, the world's so bad, the world's so negative. I don't feel like that now, and it's not that I don't care. It's just I feel that I've just got this zoomed out. It's like a zoomed out view of the world. I don't know.
Non-attached.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't feel attached to it. And while I see all that stuff going on and I can see it happening, I don't necessarily focus on that, because I'm like, me focusing on that isn't actually gonna do anything, like, apart from get me upset, or, it's again like focus on the solutions. And that's a huge value of mine. Like, there's problems everywhere, but focus on the solution, not the problem. And I think that's I think a lot of people could learn from adopting that approach about focusing on solutions.
Definitely. Also, that zoomed out non-attachment is relevant to one's worldview,
Mhm.
and vice versa. The worldview kind of determines your ability to trust the universe. I trust the universe for lots of reasons, some of which were, extraordinary experiences that I had, extrasensory perception experiences. But really, the general sense that I have is that there is no death,
Mhm.
that consciousness perseveres forever,
Mhm.
and not a drop of consciousness is ever lost.
Mhm.
So in that situation, all of these troubles that we're having here are learning experiences that will be better for having passed through. It seems to us to be intolerable suffering, and how could God be so bad as to force us to do this? But if you realize that there is no harm to be done, that
Mhm.
consciousness, other than the duration in which we perceive that we're suffering,
Mhm.
and there's even some question about whether we have to perceive that we're suffering when we're suffering. We may not have to
Mhm.
perceive that if we have enough inner strength. So if there's no death and there's nothing to worry about, and this is all happening in a perfect universe, that's one, thing that helps me be non-attached when I observe suffering, even close at hand, people I know and love suffering.
Mhm.
And of course, my objective is always to try to help them get past their need to suffer, which they're usually putting themselves through. The other thing that makes me feel that I'm in sync with you on this zoomed out feeling is that, we can tune in to the negativity in the world,
Mhm.
and we can tune out from the negativity in the world.
Mhm.
And I take comfort in the fact that right now around the planet, there's 8 billion human beings. And at this moment in time, most of them are probably feeling love.
Mhm.
And some of them are feeling suffering, but there's more love than suffering.
Mhm.
So if we tune into the love, we'll draw more of it to us and enable more of it to take place around us. So we're tuned in to the love part. We're not saying we have no compassion for those who are suffering. We're trying to help them.
Mhm.
We're trying to help them the way we know how
Mhm.
to help them help themselves by the way they process information. And particularly emotionally charged information.
Mm-hmm. It goes back to that saying, it's like where you focus your time and energy, like where you focus your time and energy matters. Essentially, if you focus on the suffering, guess what, you're going to probably suffer more. If you focus on, you know, where the love is in the world, and how many people love you. I mean, you know, I've seen this, people are, oh, you know, I'm not married with kids yet, and like, oh, this is, I really want to be married with kids, and you know, like, rather than, they're focusing on that rather than, you know, the fact that, oh my God, you have so many amazing friends that love you. You have, you know, all these, like, you can travel the world. You've got like, you've got a great job that is sustaining you and being able to, you know, again, it's that focus, it's that shift of focus. And if you focus on that perceived negative, or the piece that you don't have, you know, that's what you're going to create more of. You're going to create more of that. And I think for me, it's so simple. Now you're like, just want to scream it at people. You're like, oh my God, it's so obvious. Like, how can you not see this? Because you just want people to, you want people to be happy, and you want people to, yes, because they are in their own suffering, that the suffering is happening inside their own minds. And we're able to take ourselves out of that. And I think it's so challenging sometimes, because again, you can be there, and you can, you know, guide them or plant the seeds, but you can't do it for them. And like, that's a challenging piece, I find for myself, because I just want to shake people.
Sometimes it works to try different metaphors with them.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
if they're not getting it through one form of discourse, you know, try to
Mm-hmm.
come around from another angle to get them to see that there's a functionality that they have, that they can engage, that they can actually do this. They can
Mm-hmm.
actually supersede their own feelings of suffering.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We all have that talent, but most people don't realize that they have it.
Mm-hmm. I think as well, sometimes people are kind of addicted to the suffering. I think it becomes part of their identity. And I don't think they necessarily know who they are if they're not suffering. So sometimes people can say they want to move away from suffering, but actually it is this whole victim mindset, almost. And I think sometimes it serves people, because it stops them having to actually look deep within. So sometimes they block themselves there as well.
It's a persona that or a mask that I wore.
Mm-hmm.
It's I had kind of romanticized F. Scott Fitzgerald, Hemingway, various cynical, skeptical, pessimistic, brilliant authors whose writing moved me. I mistakenly internalized their negativities and made it into something glamorous.
Mm-hmm.
There was something glamorous and attractive about being a shunned artist, or misunderstood or not understood lost soul. And I had to shake myself out of that.
Mm-hmm.
But I was
Mm-hmm.
in it for many years, and it was, I thought it was an interesting part of my identity that I had created, but it was complete nonsense
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and
How did you,
imitative.
sorry.
And it was imitative also. You know, monkey see, monkey do. It wasn't the real me. It was taking in, you know, F. Scott Fitzgerald or Voltaire or whoever it might have been.
Mm-hmm. How did you get yourself out of that, Bill?
Self observation
Mm-hmm.
and counting the cards. Is this making me happy? You know, I go into a bar hoping that I'm going to meet a woman, but I'm sitting and I'm staring into space with a kind of a moodiness.
Mm-hmm.
Why am I moody? What is the mood? Is this
Mm-hmm.
like my persona that's going to attract a woman that I'm, you know, somehow I've been wounded?
Mm-hmm.
Where did that come from? You know, so self-observation is how I got out of it. I highly recommend introspection and self-observation. They're really good, and we've got them. Why not use them?
Exactly. We should all observe and be more self-aware. That's, I just think the world would be more like, even if you don't do anything with that awareness, it's having the awareness is a first step. If you're not aware, you can't make change and you can't make a difference. So that's what I feel like I want to spread far and wide. It's just awareness. Like, that's the first step. And then hopefully you do something with that. But yeah, you can't do anything without it. So yeah, that's what we're trying to do. So okay, so another key trigger that you'd wrote down was I approve of me. Self-rating is irrelevant. Learn and go on. So interested in this because I'm a huge believer in backing yourself and believing that every person is, resourceful, powerful, and whole, and that we should celebrate, I guess, celebrate who we are and what we bring to the world. And I think you kind of have to have your own self-belief, because otherwise nobody else is going to believe in you if you don't believe in yourself. But in terms of the self-rating piece, you say it's irrelevant and we should all learn as we go. I'm interpreting this as in just learn from every experience, like, rather than saying, oh, well done, Natalie, you did great at that. It's almost whether you did great or not so great, depending on your interpretation, is neither here nor there. It's more, what did you learn, rather than how did you do. That was my interpretation of your key four. Can you tell me a little bit more about what you meant when you said self-rating is irrelevant, learn and go on?
It's certainly not denying what you just said about the importance of realizing our own greatness, divinity, validity, right to be here, right to be oneself, and celebrating that free will and all of the wonderful things that we can achieve just because it's part of our nature. We're designed to be, in a sense, godlike. And at the same time, if one goes through the day constantly scoring oneself on every little move one makes, it starts to feel petty. And the worst aspect of it is that it's, well, two different situations in which it's really counterproductive. One is when you've just gotten into the flow state. If you pat yourself on the back, you come right out of the flow state. That's one of the negatives of constantly good boy, bad boy, good girl, good bad girl, rating oneself constantly. The other is if you're doing something, let's say you're in a fight and you make a mistake. If you're going to rate yourself on that, it's going to make you less effective in the fight. And this is like a dangerous situation that you're in. You don't want to waste time with the backward rearview mirror view of things. You just want to stay in the now. And you definitely don't want to be mad at yourself for screwing something up a moment ago, because all it does is makes it worse. You have to move on from screw ups. So those are some of my reasons for wanting to not have a constant stream of self-rating going on, possibly because I was guilty of it, constantly rating myself.
Yeah, I think that can be quite debilitating as well if you're, constantly analyzing yourself in that way. I think it's important to reflect and celebrate things, and also, reflect on perhaps what you could do better next time. But to constantly, you know, be so critical of yourself, it kind of stops you moving forward. And I think I took from it, and you know, my mom always said this to me growing up, it's like, as long as you learn, Natalie, it's not time wasted. And I think we can all learn things. We can learn things from what went well, and from, you know, perceived failures as well. We can learn, okay, well, I'm not going to do that next time, or do that differently. And I think this is where it comes down. People will say to me, like, how do you get to the point that you know, think the way you do, or perceive things the way you do? And I always say, it's just life experience, because it's that muscle of like learning quickly. It's like, do, learn, and repeat, and then do it in an enhanced way, because you have this knowledge and you've learned, so you can then implement that into your daily life. So I just think it's being a lifelong learner, and you know, you're never too old to learn. We're always learning. I guess we only stop ourselves from learning by staying in similar situations or comfortable situations. We only learn by stretching ourselves. And I think the more we stretch ourselves, the more we can all learn and get to this state quicker, I would say.
You know, open-mindedness is an important feature in being able to constantly learn.
Mm-hmm.
If you've got this overwhelming identity, dependency, addiction, identification with a political party,
Mm-hmm.
if you're just like enslaved by the notions of that political party, you're not open-minded anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever comes in is being filtered through the lens of that political party.
Mm-hmm.
And this has become something much more obvious in the United States than when I was a kid. These fixed positions of ideologies that serve as filters against learning. You can't, if you don't have an open mind, there's a severe restriction on how much you're going to learn.
Mm-hmm. We say that in coaching as well. It's, you know, coaching is a fantastic tool for people that are open-minded, and it's not even that you need to believe, you just need to be open. And we really, really struggle to work with somebody that has, you know, a fixed mindset, because it's that goes down to that whole saying, if you believe you can or you can't, you'll be right. And I think that for me is the most challenging thing, is when people have that fixed mindset, because often they're the people that need the help the most. And I just don't know how you get through to them, really, other than, you know, you hope that in some way something goes in, but whether it does or it doesn't, again, releasing the outcome.
It's now 1 minute to my next call, but what I have to do is I have to take the recording and remember how to get it into a certain icon on my desktop so Andrew can get it.
Oh yeah. Well, that's it. I could just like sit and talk to you. I'm like, you know, that way I had so many more questions, but I just end up, you know, ad-libbing. So we just see where it goes, right? We just see where it goes.
Well, we'll do more of these. You know, we'll keep doing them. And I hate to cut this short, but
no, not at all. Not at all. It was lovely speaking with you. And yeah, that's it. Get use of Andrew while you've still got him. Get this over to him. You'll be like, got some more work. So yeah, well, we'll have more fascinating conversations in a couple of weeks. So I can't wait to see you in person. And yeah, we can have a think about I'll do some Google searching and see where we can go. And you give me some recommendations too.
Okay. Looking forward to it.
Me too. It's good to know that I'm closer. We'll speak to you soon. Have a great rest of your afternoon.
You too.
Okay, bye. Bye.
Bye.